I'm Cecilia, and this is actually my first config ever, so I'm super excited to be here with you all. Just a little bit about me. I started off my career as a designer at design agencies, working on everything from branding to packaging design, website design, etc. And during my time at these design agencies, I developed a pretty big interest for 3D design. And mostly, I was working on making pretty renders and doing the Blender donut tutorial. Somehow, I ended up at Oculus. And for the majority of my time there, I was working on design systems. And now, I'm a co-founder and CPO at Bezi, where we're working on a collaborative 3D design tool for interactive experiences. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what I'm working on towards the end of the talk. I want to tell you a quick story. So it was my first day as a designer at Oculus. I was wide-eyed and so excited to get started. It was actually my first time working on AR/VR products, so I was just ready to soak everything up. I was sitting in a meeting to start to get ramped up with a team of designers, engineers, and PMs, and they were reviewing designs for a feature that would be shipped in the headset. I noticed that a lot of the designs that were being shown were 2D mock-ups of how the interface would look like. So designers would have something like this laid out in Figma or other 2D design tools and use it to communicate ideas. And if you've ever used a VR headset before, you know how panels are positioned in space and they can move with you. Or you might have UI that's attached to your hands and you can interact with it using your other hand. So whenever they had to communicate how things would appear or move, or how you would interact with it in 3D space, the conversation looked something like this. And this wasn't the designer's fault. Soon enough, I found myself doing it too, where I would try to give specs to engineers using chaotic body language. And as fun as a game of charades like this can be, honestly, it reminded me of the early days of product design and web design in some ways. The chaos of exploring the unknown, coupled with tools that may not have been built for this exact purpose. And this challenge is something we've seen play out whenever designers start designing for new technologies and platforms. And maybe some of you are around, but before there were dedicated UI design tools, we were designing websites and apps on Photoshop, and also using paper prototypes to validate ideas. If you remember this time, kudos to you, we've survived and made it this far. And speaking of paper prototypes, I love this video of a team trying to get a feel for the experience they're designing using paper prototypes. This is a way more advanced and, I think, coordinated group effort of what we're trying to do at Oculus with hand waving. But the truth is, at Oculus, we were often faced with novel challenges since we were no longer designing for just flat rectangular screens. We were actually designing for the human body and the world around us. And that really begs a question. How will our jobs as designers evolve in the age of immersive 3D experiences? And to answer this question, you first have to look at the signs of the future and where we're headed. The first one I want to talk about is, of course, AI, and more specifically, Gen AI tools. Gen AI is becoming more and more powerful by the day, and for this specific talk, I'll focus on 3D tools or 3D adjacent tools. There's something like Blockade Labs, where you can just type in what world you want to create, and it'll output a 360 image of a world that you can step into and look around in. Substance Painter is doing some real cool stuff with AI-generated image textures that you can just drag and drop onto your 3D models. There's also AI-assisted 3D rendering, where you could have a simple scene that you put together in Blender or some other tool, and then you can just explore different styles with it using natural language. And lastly, we shipped Bezi AI earlier this year, where you can put in a text prompt, and then it'll output a 3D model, and you can just drag and drop it into our editor. It's all built into our editor, so that's actually what makes it really powerful. All of these tools, I think, can seem unnerving sometimes. But tools are evolving all the time, and our roles as designers are also constantly evolving too. AI is going to have a profound impact and change the way we work. At the end of the day, I consider these as tools that help us realize our vision and creativity. Another sign we need to look out for is around spatial computing and 3D technologies. Spatial sound is something you might be familiar with, where you can place sound in space, and it helps users orient themselves, as well as seamlessly help blend virtual worlds with physical worlds. Livecast is a startup that's developing nerve-based volumetric video engines for headsets. Imagine if this is the future of how you watch videos and movies. Disney Holotile is an impressive feat of engineering, where it's an omnidirectional treadmill that you can just walk on, and it keeps you in the same place regardless of which way you're walking. It's like a real-life application of Ready Player One, if you've watched that. And then lastly, real-time 3D mapping. It's using technologies like LiDAR sensors to map your surrounding environment so that computers can understand it. It's basically what self-driving cars use today. One of my favorite quotes is any sufficiently advanced technologies is indistinguishable from magic by Arthur C. Clarke. And I think this beautifully encapsulates the specific merger between the two signs of the future that I just shared. Because when AI and 3D technologies come together, it can create something that really feels like magic. Take Project Starline, for example. It's a communication technology that's developed by Google that aims to create more immersive and lifelike video conferencing experiences. It uses a combination of computer vision, machine learning, spatial audio, and real-time compression. This needs no introduction, but last year, Apple launched their first version of the Apple Vision Pro. It's an amazing device packed with a ton of really advanced technologies, and their investment into this field, I think, gives a peek into where the world is headed. And this is how the Apple Vision Pro uses AI and 3D mapping to be able to understand your space contextually in real time. And just to clarify, this is not specific to just the Apple Vision Pro. It's actually used in other different headsets as well. But you can start to see how powerful computers are getting, where they can know where the walls are in your space and have a semantic understanding of objects that are near you. So for example, they can look at that group of polygons over there and understand that that is a table and that you can place things on its horizontal surface. So this enables people to be able to design embodied experiences that were previously not possible. And with this technology, designers will be able to build flexible and powerful products that feel most intuitive to the person using it. AI and spatial computing also has the potential to create adaptive environments where AI can modify you or your surroundings based on user preference and behaviors. This means creating highly personalized experiences that adapt in real time to the user's actions, and it makes each session super tailored and unique. So here's a concept video someone made about your body essentially becoming an eyedropper for your real-world environment. Of course, it's not real yet, but I think experiments like this is really interesting to look at because it starts to offer us the way to envision what our future might hold. And AI has been advancing at a staggering rate, so I believe that something like this could be possible one day. Through these examples, I think one thing is clear. It's that AI accelerates our increasing shift to immersive experiences. We're on the path to creating new ways for humans to interact and communicate with each other, as well as giving machines the ability to understand our physical environment in unprecedented ways. And if done right, I believe that this could be more impactful than PC and mobile devices have been to our society. So now you're probably wondering, hey, Cecilia, this is cool and all, but what does that mean for me as a designer? And that's a great question, so let's dive in here. How many of you here have tried the Headspace app? Cool, cool, some people. So for those who don't know, Headspace is an app that focuses on improving your mental health through guided meditations, exercises, and more. So let's imagine that we're designing the Headspace mobile app. Some of the things that you might consider are around flow of the, between screens, the layout of the pages, onboarding flow, definitely visual design, things around color palette, typography styles, motion design, micro interactions. All of these considerations are contained within a flat rectangle. Now, this is what the Headspace VR app looks like. It almost feels like a totally new and different app where it's basically a world you enter into, and it really focuses on immersive experiences. Users are able to enter into virtual spaces for different kinds of exercises. They can interact with things in the experience using their hands, their gaze, voice inputs. They can also walk around and navigate around the space. So as you can see, the considerations have exploded once you bring in an extra dimension. And some of these considerations might be around locomotion. How do people move around? Are they kind of teleporting between places where you click on a platform and you just appear there? Or are we encouraging people to actually walk around in this space? Visual design is no longer limited to designing flat UI on a screen. It actually becomes more like an art direction of a set, where you have to consider lighting, sound, like we talked about, environment design. What kind of a mood does it all evoke? Body position and environment is also another thing. We have to consider, is this a seated experience? Or will people be standing and walking around? Or is it a lying down experience? Those exist too. Are they going to be in a moving vehicle? Or like a car or an airplane? Or are they walking around? Designing for the body is also important. So how should people's hands look like? You see in this example, the hands are very stylized, but should they be stylized or should they look realistic? Should they be opaque or should they have some kind of translucency so that you can see past it? And lastly, navigation. How do people know where to go? If we're trying to guide them to certain areas, do we show a path that's lit up or do we allow them to follow a butterfly? So our jobs as designers are and will evolve. With the introduction of an additional dimension and access to more senses, we have more variables to consider. So I put them into 4 buckets here. This is by no means a comprehensive list, but I think it's interesting to talk through them. The first one is around game design. How do people interact with your experience? What motivates them to go through it? There's also things about environment. So navigation, like I've talked about, becomes more like you're designing an experience for like signage, if you've designed for exhibitions or museums. But that becomes really important in embodied experience and how that works with the real world if you're designing AR experiences. And multi-sensory design is really important too. So now we're not only dealing with visual feedback, we also have different ways to give people feedback, like sound, haptics if you're using controllers. So there's a lot of feedback mechanisms that you need to balance so that it doesn't feel overwhelming, but also gives adequate feedback. And lastly, storytelling. What is the flow of your product? What is it paced like? As well as considering the story arc of your experience or your product, which is not something that traditional product design, I think, has had to deal with that much. But it becomes increasingly important here. And this is the crux of what we're working on at Bezi. We're asking ourselves, how can we empower designers to innovate with new kinds of interactive experiences? And to give those of you that don't know what Bezi is a little bit of context, Bezi is a no-code collaborative design platform for 3D apps and games. So with Bezi, you can rapidly conceptualize interactive projects in 3D alone or with other people without having to write a single line of code. It's all web-based and also interoperable between devices, so whatever you build and design can immediately be experienced in VR headsets, mobile AR, as well as desktop. And our users have been building some really cool things with Bezi. For a lot of them, it's actually their first time getting into designing for 3D, period. So it's incredibly rewarding and inspiring to see designers be able to do things that they were previously not able to do. They're designing games for various platforms like desktop, mobile, and immersive devices, as well as apps for things like job training, educational material, productivity apps, and more. And our numerous conversations with our users have helped us gain an even deeper understanding of this industry. One thing that we're noticing as we build our product is that for immersive design, design and prototyping actually becomes very intertwined. Because nothing is really static anymore, everything is always responding to you or other environmental factors around you. So building an easy-to-use set of interaction design features, such as a state machine that allows designers to seamlessly move between design and also prototyping, has been a crucial part of our product principle. Another unique requirement is the importance of being able to design for your human body. Being able to craft ways for users to be able to bring UI between different spaces, as well as having their body trigger certain things, like stepping onto a platform and having that trigger an action. So that's why we built the body rig. The body rig allows you to place a body rig in your 3D scene and attach things to your hands, head, or other body parts for embodied experiences. So think of like if you're doing like a virtual painting experience. You might need a palette that's attached to your hand as well as a paintbrush. You can do that with this. So with a body rig, designers can define what's attached to where and enable people to even define the spawn point of when people enter into your space or experience, where do they appear. And a special treat for you all today, this is a sneak peek of an unreleased feature we're working on, frames. Essentially, frames allow you to define a volume and design within it, whether it be UI in space or a room that's actually responsive to the size of it using features like pinning as well as constraints. And this is something that doesn't really exist in the world right now, so it required a lot of design explorations and a lot of trial and error. But I'm very proud of the team and really excited to get this out into the world. And through all my experience working in this field and now building a new kind of 3D design tool, what really excites me is that AI and spatial computing combined enables us to craft experiences that redefine human interaction. I'm sure that everyone here feels it in their skin that everything is changing so fast, and it's true. Not only the tools we use evolve rapidly, our jobs as designers are evolving too. But it opens up a plethora of new possibilities that enables us to create new patterns and experiences. So with that, I'm beyond excited to build the future with you all. Thank you.